By the year 2030, according to the deep state, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Okay, don't take my word for it. That's them talking. Stay tuned and I'll tell you more. So the deep state has this crazy plan called the Great Reset. We've been warning about it since the summer, long before you heard anything about it from the fake media. Well, they're getting closer and closer to their objectives, and they're really starting to trumpet what they're up to. They have the World Economic Forum, which is the leading force behind this Great Reset, at least officially. They've also got the United Nations on board. They've got the International Monetary Fund. They've got the British Crown, and on and on and on. Basically, the elites of the world, including, by the way, the Communist Party of China. They're getting more open about telegraphing what they're up to. So just recently we told you about the transhumanist agenda, where Klaus Schwab, aka Dr. Evil, who's promoting this for the World Economic Forum, said we're going to be fusing your biological identity with technology, right? Transhumanism. We're going to turn you into a cyborg. Well, there's another component that I want to talk about today, and that is the return of feudalism, the return of communism. And the most obvious sign of that is the war against private property. I want to show you a little video, just real quick, that the World Economic Forum put out on their website so that you see where they are going with this. And then when we get back from that, we'll talk a little bit more and break it down. All right, so these 8 predictions that they have, so-called predictions from their members of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Councils. Then note the date, 2030. That's very important, right? And what was the first thing they said? You will own nothing and you will be happy. In fact, they say you'll rent everything. Whatever you want, it's just going to be magically delivered by drone. That's ridiculous, of course, right? But what does it mean to not own anything? It means you are like cattle. You are like livestock. And we'll talk a little bit more about the feudalism, the communist component in a minute. But I want you to know, too, this is not the first time or the only time the World Economic Forum has said things like this. So they also posted an article up on their website. You can see it here by Danish parliamentarian Ida Auken. And what she says is, hey, welcome to the year 2030. There's that date again. I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes. It might seem odd to you, but it makes perfect sense for us in this city, right? It sounds just like a cattle, a piece of cattle or a sheep or a chicken, right? Oh, my glorious overlords, they're so wonderful. They give me everything I need, right? She says, we have access to transportation and accommodation and food and all the things we need in our daily lives, right? Just like my cows, right? They sit out there and they moo in the field, and when they're hungry, I bring them food, and when they're thirsty, I bring them water, and when they need medical attention, I bring them a veterinarian, and then once they have served their purpose, I send them off to the slaughterhouse and pocket $800, right? And yet this is being presented as this wonderful, glorious future that we are all going to live in, right? Think about this, guys. Think about this. This is absolutely crazy. This means the end of human liberty in a very real sense, right? And they've said clearly this Great Reset is for everybody, right? You have to participate. Every country has to participate. Everybody has to participate. The UN is on board now, and of course the UN has been on this anti-property rights agenda for a long time. Back in 1976, right? We're talking almost 50 years ago now. They were promoting this same agenda. Okay. UN Habitat, which is a very important UN operation, they came out with a report after UN Habitat 1. They had this summit, and this is what they said. I'm going to quote for you what they said here. Land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset controlled by individuals and subject to the pressures and inefficiencies of the market. Private land ownership is also a principal instrument of accumulation and concentration of wealth, and therefore contributes to social injustice. If unchecked, it may become a major obstacle in the planning and implementation of development schemes. Public control of land use is therefore indispensable, right? And that all sounds like really new and hip and stuff, but it's not new, right? These kinds of ideas, this idea that people shouldn't be allowed to own property, that land has to be controlled by the collective, this is not a new idea. It's been around for a long time. Let's just start in the recent future, right? Even when that UN Habitat report came out, there were billions of people around the world who were living under communist and socialist slavery. Just in the last century alone, over 100 million people were slaughtered by their own communist and socialist overlords who were trying to implement these ideas that you don't get to own property, you can't have land, right? The collective, the dictatorship of the people will own all the land on behalf of the proletariat, right? This has been one of the most horrific times in human history for the people who've lived under these governments, and now they're trying to make it look cool and hip, and they're telling us this is the direction that we're going. The elites in the Western world, I mean, this is not just something that they had in the East. The elites in the Western world are fully on board with this agenda as well, and they have been for a long time. Some months ago, we did an episode of Behind the Deep State where we went through the admissions that were in the book Tragedy and Hope. You see that right behind me here, by Carroll Quigley. He was Bill Clinton's mentor. Here, let's roll the clip real quick of Bill Clinton talking about Carroll Quigley and how Carroll Quigley was his mentor.
And then, as a student at Georgetown, I heard that call clarified by a professor named Carroll Quigley.
And so this Carroll Quigley guy is a big deal. In 1966, he published this book called Tragedy and Hope that you see behind me. Incredibly important book. And he really spilled the beans, just plain and simple, right? He talked about this global system that for some perspective first, he considered himself to be kind of part of the elite. He said he's been very close to them for decades. He had an opportunity to examine their secret papers for a couple of years, and he said he agrees with most of their objectives. His big difference of opinion with them was that they wanted to be secret, and he thought they ought to be known. And in this book, Tragedy and Hope, he explained that the powers of financial capitalism had another far-reaching aim, nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. This system was to be controlled in feudalist fashion by the central banks of the world, acting in concert by secret agreements arrived at in frequent and private meetings and conferences. Okay, note the reference to the global system controlling the political and economic system of the world based on feudalist principles, right? So what is feudalism? Well, for those of you who slept through fourth grade history class, you'll remember that in Europe, for hundreds of years, and also around most of the rest of the world, people were not able to own private property. Instead, your overlords owned all the private property, right? In Europe, you had the kings who owned everything, and then they would delegate some to their lords and their barons, and then the lords and the barons would let the serfs, that's you and I, right, everybody else, live on a little piece of land as long as you did what you were told and surrendered what you were told when you were ordered to do so, right? That is feudalism. And that is exactly what they're talking about here, right? Remember, you will own nothing and you will be happy. The UN also has this happiness agenda. We'll probably save that for another day. But they're serious, guys. They want to strip you of your right to own private property. Instead, you will be a serf. If you haven't read Friedrich Hayek's book, The Road to Serfdom, you ought to read it because we are flying down the road to serfdom, pedal to the metal, about to lose all of our freedoms. Now, Quigley went on to say that the apex of the system would be the Bank for International Settlements, and he pointed out that that this was a private bank owned by the world's central banks, which are themselves private corporations, but he pointed out that even the people who run the central banks are not the real power behind the throne. He said, and I quote, "It must not be felt that these heads of the world's chief central banks were themselves substantive powers in world finance. They were not. Rather, they were the technicians and agents of the dominant investment bankers of their own countries who had raised them up and were perfectly capable of throwing them down, right? So even the heads of the central banks who seem so powerful, who seem so important, who go to all these fruity little secret meetings, they themselves are little technocrats, servants of the true elites. And so this is where they're going with this, folks. And when they say you won't be allowed to own property, they mean you, right? They mean you serfs. They do not plan to give up their private property. In fact, they will control everything, right? You look at George Soros, for example. He put his billions of dollars into a tax-exempt foundation, and then his tax-exempt foundations owns all the fancy stuff and the yachts and the planes and all the rest of it, right? They will be the masters. You will be the serf. They're not going to give up their property. You will give up your property. This all goes right along with Agenda 2030. We've talked about that. We've done videos about that. You've done articles about that. This is basically the UN plan. They call it the Master Plan for Humanity. And actually, the World Economic Forum and the UN signed an agreement last year where the World Economic Forum was going to help implement Agenda 2030 and bring business on board. So it all meets together, guys. There is an agenda here. It is essentially global slavery, global feudalism. And if you keep going through those predictions that we showed you earlier, right, America's not going to be the dominant superpower anymore. We've been reporting on this at the New American for many, many years. There's this agenda they call creating the multipolar world order. So once they displace America as the lead superpower, they discredit the American system of individual liberty, private property. Then we will move to this abomination called a multipolar new world order, where communist China and the Russians and the Cubans and the Venezuelans also get to help rule the world. They say Western values will be tested to the breaking point. We're going to have a billion refugees will be coming into the Western world. Folks, this is what they're preparing for, and if we're not careful, they will get away with it. So I hope everybody's paying attention. I hope everybody is doing their best to stop this. Get involved, get educated, and let's put a stop to this. At some point in the not-too-distant future, we'll do some episodes on solutions, what people can do. If you're not yet acquainted with the book that we have, Deep State, let me pull it out here. Deep State, the invisible government behind the scenes. It's a new book on the deep state that we've just released. Hopefully it'll be a blessing to you. You'll find out who these people are, what they're up to, how they work. But folks, this great reset is the new marketing slogan for the New World Order. And we need to understand, if they get their way, you will own nothing. Okay? You will be a slave. Plain and simple. There's no more beating around the bush. Some years ago when we told you this, that, oh, you guys are conspiracy theorists. We're not going to come take your private property. Come on, would we do that, right? You can trust us. And now they're saying that you're an extremist and a kook and a conspiracy theorist for not thinking that this is a good idea. Folks, these people need to be stopped. If we're going to preserve our freedom, they have to be stopped. It's either us or them. It's either freedom or slavery. Sign up, subscribe, go to thenewamerican.com, donate if you want to keep videos like this coming, share it with your friends, and also please get involved, folks. Get involved. Pray for our country. God bless you all. And until next week, I'm Alex Newman. This is Behind the Deep State. Thanks again.
It's no surprise that Facebook and YouTube and all the titans and tyrants of Silicon Valley, the big tech companies, are censoring our content. We might not even be on these platforms for too much longer with the way things are going, folks. That's why it's all the more important that you head over to thenewamerican.com. You can sign up for our daily, weekly, or even monthly headlines. They'll get emailed directly to you. Better yet, you can subscribe to the New American Magazine. You'll get these delivered right to your door. And they can't censor a printed magazine. So hey, get over to thenewamerican.com, sign up today, and stay informed in the fight for freedom.